welcome to Have You Bully-Proofed Your Business from the Effects of the Virus that's going around. And I'm here today with Shawn. Shawn, do you want me to introduce you first, or let you share some of the ground rules for today's conversation?
Why don't you introduce me, and then there's only a few of them. They're the typical things you'd expect an attorney to say at the beginning of a presentation.
All right. So Shawn Yesner is a Florida native. He's born in Tampa, raised in Miami. He is actually a graduate of FSU. He was a drummer in the marching band there and is a huge fan, though while you can't see it in the background of the room, he's got stuff all throughout. He has done a couple different things in the field of law. Now he owns his own firm. It's called Yesner Law, and they are an amazing little firm. And you guys are located in Clearwater, correct?
The law firm's in Clearwater, but we handle stuff pretty much all over the Tampa Bay area and all over the state of Florida.
And his goal is to help with helping homeowners, consumers, and others eliminate the financial bullies in their life, which is why this conversation is so appropriate for them. In addition to being an amazing attorney, he's also a speaker and has spoken for all kinds of professional associations and networking organizations, and even has an article in the Florida Foreclosures, What Lawyer Needs to Know book. In 2015, he actually started his Crushing Debt podcast. I think I remember talking to you before that even was even happened.
You were the accountability partner that forced me to launch.
And 5 years later, here we continue on. So that is awesome. It is on all the different places that you can go to listen to your podcast. You can download and subscribe. I was just listening to one yesterday. I think it was called Zombie Cars. I was like, he is not probably talking about the kind of zombies that I was thinking of, because I just got done watching The Walking Dead. But we had some fun. I enjoyed that. I mean, he had one a couple of weeks ago about the virus and the effects as well. So you can go back and pop in and listen to that. In addition to his podcast, he also has a book by the same name. You got a copy of the book there that you can show us, Crushing Debt. So he has a book by the same name. It is available on Amazon, so you can get that there. And he's going to talk to us today about how to bully-proof your business. So talk to us, Shawn. Oh, set up some rules of, give us your attorney disclaimers.
Just one or two. So first, even though I am an attorney, anything that we're talking about today, you want to independently verify. This is not legal advice necessarily. This is stuff that I've learned, stuff that I've been working with clients and stories and practical tips. But you definitely want to verify. You definitely want to research this information yourself. I'll get you started. I'll get you pointed in the right direction, but this isn't a substitute for legal advice. The other thing is that things are changing almost daily. And so as programs get rolled out, they may change. So, again, just vet whatever it is we're going to talk about today. Research it for yourself. I'll get you pointed in the right direction, and then you can figure out what to do with the information from there.
Awesome. So Shawn's got all kinds of stuff to share with us today. As we go through this conversation, do know that there is down at the bottom a chat box. If you have any questions, pop those in the chat box. I'm going to be keeping an eye on those and letting Shawn know when you have questions. If he's in the middle of something, we may let him finish his sentence or the paragraph. But we do want to make sure that we answer as many of the questions that we can here today. Though, again, it's not legal advice. I mean, it's advice, but he is not your attorney until you hire him. Right, Shawn?
Right.
Okay. And we can't hire you should we have questions, correct?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah. Assuming you are in Florida. If you're outside of Florida, then I'll see if I can refer you to some attorneys wherever you are. But if you're inside of Florida, absolutely, I can help.
Cool. All right. So Shawn, go ahead. Tell us about what we need to be doing to bully-proof our business.
Well, the very first thing that I wanted to talk about was all the different loan programs that are coming out from both the state of Florida and the SBA. So I know that the very first program that came out was a loan that you could get, and I believe it is from the state of Florida directly, and it's a loan that you can get. You don't have to pay interest on it for 12 months. So it's interest-free for 12 months. But then at the end of that 12 months, and this is actually probably, I think, the program that that created this presentation here. So at the end of the program, at the end of the year, the loan balloons at 12% interest. So what that means is you owe all the money back plus 12% interest after a year.
So are you paying the 12% interest that you would have paid for the first year? How does that work?
I think that you only pay the 12% interest on the money that is outstanding. So if you borrowed 50 grand, for example, and you paid 10 over the course of the year, so you owed 40. At the end of the year, you'd owe 40,000 plus 12% interest. Now that's about $4,800, but that's simple interest. So some of the questions that I don't know that, again, you have to research is whether that 12% is compounding. So is it 12% interest at the end of a year, or has it compounded over the year, which it means it may be a lot more than $4,800 when the year is over. And is it calculated on the 40 that you have to pay back, or is it calculated on the 50 that you originally borrowed? I think it's calculated on what you owe, not the total amount that you borrowed.
So that could vary depending on the loan that you get?
I think it could, or the type of program that it is. Although of all the loan programs that I've heard about, because it balloons at 12% interest, this is probably the quote worst one.
Gotcha. I'm sitting here thinking about, I remember like when I was in college, it's like, I don't remember like Best Buy or the furniture stores. It's like 0 interest for 2 years, interest free. But if you didn't pay it by the end of that 2 years, then you were stuck with a whole bunch of interest from the previous years.
Yeah, and I think with some of those types of programs, the like you said, the rooms to go and we did one to get new appliances in the kitchen a couple of years ago. Those type of loans, I believe, they compound on the entire balance, not just the unpaid portion, but the entire portion collects interest if you don't pay it back within the 0% interest term. So I think this loan would be one, if you were in a business that you knew would thrive after a few months, really start to make money again after the economy comes back, then maybe this is a loan you might want to consider, because you can budget to pay the whole thing back over the course of a year. And so therefore you wouldn't incur any of that interest and it would be paid back. But if you're wondering, is it going to take my business 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to sort of get back on track, this is probably not the loan for you.
Okay. Now, are there other loan options out there?
There's 2 more that I want to talk about. One is what's been called the payroll protection loan, or the payroll protection plan. That is the SBA loan that is in certain circumstances forgivable. So you fill out an application with the SBA, and actually there's a little confusion here, because in talking to a couple of different bankers, they don't have information yet from the SBA about how these programs are going to roll out. So what we're encouraging people to do, what these bankers are encouraging people to do, is fill out the applications online, get your documents together, and then be ready. And that, because this might be a thing where the first in line gets the money. And if you wait a week, 2 weeks, a month to apply for some of these loans, the money may not be left. There may not be any money left. But these are the payroll protection loans. So these are loans for businesses of 500 or fewer employees. The maximum loan you can get is 2.5 times your average payroll over the last 12 months. So if your average payroll was $100,000 last year, you qualify for $250,000 of a loan.
Okay.
There's no collateral, there's no personal guarantee, and then the loan forgiveness is tied to the use of the money. So if you use the money for payroll, if you use the money for rent, if you use the money for payroll expenses, if you use the money for utilities, and there's a couple other different classifications of ways you can spend that money, then to the extent you spend that money, it is forgiven. So let's say you borrow $250,000, and what I'm recommending, what a lot of other bankers, a lot of other attorneys are recommending, is you open a separate account at your bank, and that's where you deposit this money. That way you can track how you've spent it. So you take out a loan for $250,000, or you get this forgivable loan from the SBA for $250,000, and you end up spending, let's say $50,000 in payroll. Let's say, and I'm making up numbers, let's say another 10 grand in payroll expenses. So now you're up to 60. You spend another, I don't know, 12 grand on rent. So now you're up to 72. And you spend another, whatever, $1,000 on all the various utilities. So you're up to 73. Well, 73,000 of that 250 is forgiven. Okay. Now the rest of it, when the loan becomes due, I think is at 3.5% or 4% interest, and it's not a balloon. I think it's repaid, I want to say over, I think like a 10-year period, but it's a fairly long period of time. So what I might do in that situation is any money that I have left over in that separate account that was not used, pay it back immediately.
Gotcha.
And then show the SBA all your receipts for all the allowed expenses. That amount is forgiven. And now you're out of debt to the SBA. You have no more money owed to the SBA. Or worst case scenario, if you use a couple thousand, 1 or 2 or 3,000 for expenses that are not forgivable. So I pay for my podcast production, or I pay for to take a client out for a meal when the stay-at-home, something like that. Then I'm only paying a small amount back at a very, very low interest rate. But I think the better idea is use the separate account, use some kind of program, QuickBooks, something like that to track how you're spending the money. Whatever you don't use, you immediately pay back, and that will that'll float you. That it's designed to keep people employed. It's designed to allow you as the business owner to keep people employed. Okay. The other thing that I read about it is that typically when a loan is forgiven, the Uncle Sam steps in and says, well, if you don't have to pay back that debt, then you got a benefit. And anytime you get a benefit, Uncle Sam wants his cut. And so there's a 1099-C, which is forgiveness of indebtedness income. And from what I read, there is no forgiveness of debt income in connection with this type of a loan. So in other words, you won't have to pay taxes on the amount that's forgiven.
Oh, wow.
So that's also a good thing that they wrote into the law. So that's a very, very simple, very, very basic overview of the payroll protection plan.
Okay.
Again, what I would say is call your banker. This is not the time to call a different banker. They're probably going to give preference to the people that they bank with. So call your banker. If you want to switch an account to a new bank, now's probably the time to do it and get in good with your banker and see if you can get some of these this forgivable loan from the SBA. But again, right now, we don't really know how they're going to vet it. We don't really know how they're going to track it. The question I keep asking is, let's assume I get a $50,000 forgivable loan and I immediately pay myself $49,000. But because I'm also a bankruptcy attorney, I get a flood of clients that run the business that I basically wouldn't have needed the loan. Mm-hmm. So I can show that I pay payroll, I pay rent, I pay all these other forgivable expenses. How is the SBA going to know what dollar went to paying me money to survive and what money went to the forgivable type of expenses? So we still don't quite know yet, and I don't even think the banks know yet how we're going to vet it, how we're going to track it, which again is why I'm suggesting doing all this in a separate account.
Yeah, and I think you bring up an interesting point for those of you here on the Zoom. If you don't have a great relationship with your banker, I know sometimes, like when I first got into business for myself, I was just at Bank of America and I had always been there and it was easy and it's around the corner. And eventually I connected with a local banker, the gal that does my banking. I can text her, I can call her, I can email her. She usually responds within an hour. I mean, it's way ridiculous quick. And so I think there is something to be said about having that personal connection. And if you don't currently have one, now might be the time to look at switching banks. There's definitely advantages to, the big banks. But I love the idea of the small banks because, I go in there, they know my name, they know my dog's name. Because when I go in, I go into the bank like 3 times a year. because I don't like to go to the bank. I mean, we've got the phone. That's what this is for anything. But when I do, like, she's all the way in the corner. I was going to show Callie. I take my dog in. They know her name. They know me. And it's easy to talk to them. And then they know your business better. So if you're not yet currently in a relationship like that, look at one of your community banks. I'm sure Shawn can recommend some. I can recommend some. Just if you don't have that relationship, it can definitely make it easier and may not help this time around, but people have time to develop some relationships right now if they're not working. So it could be a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, Shawn, sorry. You were taking a drink and I'm like, let me talk about bankers.
No, that's fine. No, I agree. I completely agree. I am curious. And again, one of these things that we just don't know yet, if credit unions are going to be able to offer these types of loans. So again, I don't want to bash credit unions. And if you are with a credit union, then definitely go and ask your person at the credit union, because we just don't know yet if this is a traditional bank type of product, SBA product, Small Business Administration, for those of you that don't know what the SBA stands for, or if this is something that you can get through your credit union. So again, just double check that as well.
It sounds like there's a lot that we don't know, and it's not that you don't know, or it's not that, we're unsure. It's just some of the details haven't come out and haven't even been created. They're trying to be proactive, and they're going to we'll figure it out after the fact.
Right.
Kind of thing.
The Small Business Administration doesn't even know yet, so that's one thing. So the other thing is, the next thing is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or I've heard it referred to as an EIDL. EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That's one of the newer programs that came out. Again, it's an SBA loan. It's a Small Business Administration loan. And it is a loan for, I want to say it's like 3 or 4% interest. But here's the interesting thing about this loan is that you get what some people are calling a grant, what some people are calling a forgivable $10,000 advance, whether or not you qualify for the loan. So you apply for the loan and you get this $10,000 advance. And then if you don't apply for the loan or you don't want the loan, you just decline it, but you still get the $10,000 and you don't have to pay it back. So I think this would be a great thing for somebody that just needs short-term funding or a smaller business. I mean, for me, 10 grand is a huge chunk of my monthly expense, my monthly nut, so to speak. So that may be a small enough amount that I can get through right away, short term, and then work on making some more money. And again, the beauty of it is, if you don't qualify for this EIDL, this Economic Injury Disaster Loan, you still get to keep the 10 grand. If you qualify and you don't want the loan, you still get to qualify for the 10 grand. Now, again, one of the pieces of uncertainty, I don't know if qualifying for this loan completely disqualifies you from the forgivable loan, the Payroll Protection Plan loan, or if it's just a reduction in what you get. So if you would have qualified for a $100,000 Payroll Protection Plan loan, but you got the $10,000 advance, now maybe you'll get 90 instead of 100, or you may not get anything at all.
Gotcha.
So what I'm thinking is, if all you need is that quick 10 grand hit, then go for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. If you think you need more than that because you have a larger payroll, then wait and go for the Payroll Protection Plan loan. And the information on the Payroll Protection Plan loans should be out, this week. Bankers are figuring it out today, tomorrow, Thursday, as we record this, today, tomorrow, Thursday. So we should know a lot more in the coming days. But if you need just that quick hit, that quick fix, then the EIDL loan sounds like it would be a good option, because you get that $10,000 advance and then you're done.
Gotcha.
Whether you qualify for the loan or not, whether you take the loan or not.
Okay.
So those are all the things that the state of Florida and the Small Business Administration have done to help small businesses. And it's funny, because I think back to Ignite Your Business and what's a small business, and how we joke about how the different people define. And that's what everybody's been talking about today. Small business loans, we don't quite.
And people are realizing that small business is not what they think of as small business.
Right. Small business, for purposes of these loans, a lot of these loans are 500 people or less.
Which most people would think of as a huge business.
Right. So I just keep laughing to myself about, obviously our elected representatives never went to Ignite Your Business.
No, they have not. Well, one has, but that's the only one I know of in Florida, and he's at a lower level. So one of our participants was saying, I just did the $10,000 loan app last night. Great info about the Florida loan. Won't be finishing that application. Maylin, you put it in an S, but that is all we got. So I don't know if that was, oh, okay. So for someone whose payroll averages $1,200 a week.
I would think it sounds like where she's going, for someone whose payroll averages $1,200 a week, you're probably more focused on the payroll protection plan. And then for Randy, you're welcome. Although again, do a little bit more digging. I don't want you, if you could have qualified for the $10,000 advance, and then just get $10,000 less on the payroll protection plan loan. If you need that short-term hit, I don't want to be the one that tells you not to try for it. So, do your research to make sure you're making the right decision for you.
Cool.
So,
all right, we'll see if anybody else has any questions on the loans. I know, Shawn, you wanted to talk to us a little bit about bankruptcy provisions.
Yeah, so there was one other thing a couple other things that happened here, and I apologize. I know I should be looking at the camera, but because this stuff is changing so quickly, I've got some notes in front of me, so that's why I may be looking down from time to time. So, in August of last year, before any of this was even on the radar, Congress passed the SBRA, the Small Business Reorganization Act, and when a business has to file bankruptcy, we're either talking about a Chapter 7, which is a liquidation, which I don't know that we have enough time to finish and go into today, or there's what a lot of people think about as the Chapter 11, the reorganization for a small business. Well, that law that passed in August became effective in February. Again, none of these timelines having to do with the pandemic, all sort of coincidental. But what the SBRA does is it makes Chapter 11s easier for small businesses. And so if you can't take out a loan, if you don't qualify for the loan, but you still have income coming in, you may want to consider a Chapter 11 to restructure, reorganize. We can lower unsecured debts. We can pay debts back to vendors for pennies on the dollar. We group creditors together and pay them off similarly for some percentage on the dollar. And so what the SBRA did, Small Business Reorganization Act, created subchapter 5, Roman numeral V, subchapter 5 of Chapter 11, which basically makes Chapter 11 faster and easier for small businesses. Now, the SBRA defined a small business as less than, I want to say it was like $2.7 million in overall debt. That's what the SBRA defined as a small business. Now, I think some of this recent legislation passed in response to the coronavirus increased that debt limit, I want to say up to like 7 million.
Wow, that's a lot of debt.
Yeah, so now a small business, for purposes of this provision of Chapter 11, is a business with, I want to say like 7 million in debt. Now that goes away, I think in a year, and goes back down to that $2.7 million level. So if you're a business owner and for whatever reason you don't want or don't qualify for any of these small business loans, but you do want to try to salvage the business and you do have regular income coming in. So obviously this isn't a provision that would apply to bars and restaurants necessarily.
Yeah.
But if you have income coming in and you want to restructure the debts of the business, subchapter 5 of Chapter 11 will make it a lot easier to do so. That was one of the bankruptcy provisions. There was another bankruptcy provision for individuals that file bankruptcy in some of this coronavirus legislation that makes it a little bit easier for individuals who are on payment plans through Chapter 13s. If they fall behind because of the coronavirus, we can extend their payment plan from 5 years to 7 years. So I know this is about protecting your business from coronavirus, but I know there's also some things in there for individual people that have filed bankruptcy. Aside from that, there's all the other normal things that, again, the stuff that I talk about in here. So,
like what?
Call your vendors, call your creditors. There's a section in the book that I say debt settlement ain't poker. You don't need to bluff your vendors. You don't need to bluff your creditors. If you've got the information to show that your business is hurting, reach out to them, talk to them, show them your payroll, show them your profit and loss statements, show them those types of things, and they may be more willing to work with you. Forgive a couple payments, move some of the payments to the back end. This also applies to mortgages. Now, very, very careful with mortgages. What I'm hearing is a lot of banks are saying we'll forbear, meaning we won't take any action if you don't make payments for the next 3 months. But month 4, you owe 4 months worth of payments right away. So be careful of that. If you're going to do something like that, save as much as you can over the next 3 months. So when you get to month 4 and you have to pay it back, you're not so much cash strapped to do it.
If I'm talking to the mortgage company and I'm asking them to help me out, like what should I be saying to them, and how do I make sure I don't get in that situation where, because to me it's kind of like, if I can't pay my mortgage this month, then how in the world do you expect me to have 4 months worth of mortgages in 4 months?
Right. And hopefully it's a situation where even though someone couldn't pay their entire mortgage payment this month, maybe they could pay half of it. And so if you can afford to pay half of it, set that half aside. Again, even if you have to, take it out in cash, put it in an envelope, lock it up. Create a separate bank account, put it in there, and don't link it to your others so you're not tempted to transfer money back and forth. Do something that you're taking that money out of your bank account, you're taking it out of your control until you need it 4 months down the road. But again, be honest with the bank. I would be talking to the bank about, here's what I can do. My job's been impacted. I've been laid off. There's also one thing we didn't talk about was all the unemployment, which be careful with unemployment, because a lot of those super benefits that have been, that extra $600 that's been written into the coronavirus bill, that's now taxable.
Oh.
Even though you're getting an extra $600 of unemployment, you're gonna
have to pay taxes.
They're not withholding, and you're gonna have to pay tax on that at the end of the year.
Gotcha.
Or when you pay your taxes.
So, is now a good time for a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. So Tom wants to know, are you aware if Georgia is offering the 0 interest loan as Florida does? The option number 1 on your presentation today.
I do not know. I'm sorry. All I've been focused on is Florida, because that's where I practice, and then at Federal, which is the SBA stuff. So I don't know anything specific to Georgia.
Okay. Sorry, Tom. That's okay.
Sorry, Tom.
Ralph wants to know, if you have people on your payroll that are 1099, can you count them in your payroll payout as well as your W-2 employees?
Yes, I believe you can. Let me double check something real quick here, but I believe the answer to that is yes. Payroll costs can include 1099 contractor payments in certain circumstances, and any compensation to an employee. Payroll costs to 1099 contractors can be included generally. So research it specifically, but I think that the generic answer to that question is yes.
Okay, cool. If y'all have any more questions, please put them in the chat box or the Q&A. Tom said, thanks, Shawn. Shawn, can you give us one more tip out of your book? And wait a minute, your book right now, don't you have that on like super special on Amazon?
Yeah, so I reduced the price of the book to $9.95. And then I also have the book up on Kindle now, which is fairly new development. It's only been on Kindle for less than a week as we record this. And the Kindle version is 99 cents.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you can check out all kinds of tips there. But will you give us one more tip, Shawn, on the from Crushing Debt, on what we could do to help crush the debt?
Yeah, I know student loans. So student loans are another big one. Right now, in connection with the coronavirus, in connection with the pandemic, a lot of student loan servicers are either, again, forbearing on payments and not. So typically when you get a forbearance on a student loan, it just, the interest continues to tick. From what I understand, for federally backed student loans, they're forbearing on payments. You don't have to pay them back, and interest does not continue to tick. So again, sign into your student loan portal and make sure. I know a lot of my friends have been signing into their student loan portal and seeing next payment due 0. Now, I am continuing to pay my student loans, number 1, because they're affordable for me to do so, but number 2, I'm thinking that's all just going to be a straight up reduction of principal. And so I can probably make a bigger dent in my student loans by continuing to pay them if they're not accruing interest.
Gotcha.
But then again, once we're through all this, there's all kinds of stuff that before the virus that was coming out about negotiating with student loan creditors, paying student loan creditors in bankruptcy, discharging student loan creditors. I know that I'm keeping a close eye on the election to see who gets elected and what their policies are going to be regarding student loans. So, again, if you're having issues paying your student loans because of the coronavirus, log into the portal, reach out to your student loan company. To the extent they are federally backed student loans, you might not have to pay them right now.
Okay, cool. So I was just thinking, because you're talking here about negotiating. So if you haven't yet, I would encourage you to subscribe to Shawn's podcast, Crushing Debt. He does actually have a couple podcasts on negotiating with a little fun twist, because he talks about how he was like negotiating at the garage sales and lesson learned from the garage sales. I have no idea what episode numbers those are. But you can probably,
if you keep talking, I can track them down.
But we can search it. We can search in the podcast, can't we?
You can search within the podcast. The other thing is all the podcasts are available on the firm's website, which is yesnerlaw.com. And so if you click on the podcast link within the within the Yesner Law website, and then Control F and search for garage sale, and they should all pop up.
Gotcha. So yeah, check out the podcast. Grab you the book. Shawn, anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to get this information out. And again, if anybody has questions, absolutely connect with me. Let me know, and I'll do my best to either answer them or refer you to the source that can.
How can we connect with you?
Again, easiest way is the website. Everything connects from the website. So it's just yesnerlaw.com. There's only one S in Yesner. But there's the podcast link, the blog link, all the social media links, everything sort of spokes out from the wheel of yesnerlaw.com.
Cool. Awesome. Randy says, thanks so much. I'll be subscribing.
Sweet. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so very, oh, wait, I got one more Q&A. Tom wants to know, when will your grilling cookbook be published? Is it going to be a grilling cookbook or a green egg cookbook?
Neither, but thank you for asking, Tom. It is sort of on the back burner. So I've shared with you, Tiffanie, I will share publicly for accountability purposes.
You know better than that with me.
I do have the bones of book number 2 working right now. It's what I've been working on sometimes in my downtime during the virus here. But book number 2 is going to be about budgeting and how to budget to pay off your creditors. But bopping around in the back of my mind is a second podcast about the big green egg. So that one, maybe once I get book number 2 fired up and moving, I'll start working on podcast number 2 about the big green egg.
That was very punny of you. Fired up.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Well,
try.
Thank you all so much for watching. If you know somebody that should have been on this, we'll have the video up within a day or so on YouTube, on my channel. We'll be putting it out there on Facebook. Let Shawn know if you have any other questions, and hopefully I'll see you in another interview soon. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so very much, Shawn.
Thanks.